Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deborah Uber, the Education Coordinator for the Embryo Adoption Awareness Center. We're so excited to have you all here this morning and are very pleased to bring you our newest webinar, Creating a Family Profile for Embryo Adoption. Now, before we get started this morning, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation using the questions you submit through the Q&A feature. You may submit your questions at any time during the session, and we will answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, simply click on the Q&A panel in the lower right-hand portion of the screen, type your question into the dialog box, and click the Send button. If you happen to be in the full screen view, you can click on the question mark icon on the toolbar in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. This will open the Q&A panel on your screen only. When you submit your question, it will be visible to all of the panelists, but not visible to other attendees. And we do expect the presentation to last approximately 45 minutes to 15 minutes for Q&A. We will be distributing a copy of today's presentation and a comprehensive list of answers to all questions submitted today during the webinar. If you experience any technical difficulties during the presentation, please contact WebEx Technical Support at 866-229-3239. And just as a reminder, this presentation is being recorded today, and everybody who registered will receive a link to the recording. Now, our presenter this morning is Hannah Day. Hannah is the team lead for the Snowflake's Embryo Adoption Program. She has a degree in psychology and has worked with both placing and adopting families throughout her time with Snowflakes. Hannah has reviewed countless family profiles for adoptive families and works to match placing and adopting families that are working with Snowflakes. She has some great insight into things that work well and not so well in family profiles, so we're so happy to have her insight for this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, Hannah. I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Deb. I'm really excited to share about how to create a great family profile. These are something that's really important and is not something that should probably be rushed through, but should take time to be able to use these to connect with your placing family. So to get started, a family profile, like we said, it's a snapshot of who you are. So it's what you stand for. You're going to talk about things like your gifts and your interests. So it's a kind of like an autobiography, sharing your personal journey of how you came to Snowflakes, how you came to embryo adoption and are now in the matching phase. So you'll be sharing things like your hopes and dreams of life with your child. So why is the family profile so important? The family profile is super important because the placing families are making a very emotional and deeply personal decision. I used to take our inquiries with our placing families, and when they call, they're coming from all different places emotionally, but all of them are in a deeply emotional place. They feel connected to these embryos because maybe most likely they already had children in their family born from the same set of embryos. So these are going to be genetic siblings to their children. So when you're creating your family profile, you want to introduce yourself to them and put them at ease, making sure that they're making the right decision because they're going to be choosing your profile first. This is the best opportunity with the family profile for them to be able to visualize that child that's going to be raised in your home and visualize what your home life would be with that child. So what format should you use? There's a few different options out there, but the ultimate goal at the end is to make sure that it can be converted into a PDF format. The reason for that is that during our matching phase, we share the family profiles via email. So when we have a placing family that we're ready to match you with, we will send your profile to them, and then likewise, you will also get their family profile via email. So it's really important that it's in that PDF format. That way we don't have to slow down the matching process of trying to convert things to get them through by email. We want to be able to get you matched as quickly as possible. So your family profile should reflect your personality. Things like, are you simple and straightforward? Maybe you prefer being outdoors, or maybe you prefer more creative things, like you like art and scrapbooking, or maybe you like doing more things like city, you like working in the city. For this reason, you're going to want to share about who you are because we have placing families that come from all different walks of life. So you may think, oh, maybe they don't have any families that will connect with me if I say that I'm more outdoorsy. When in fact, like I said, we've got placing families from all different places in life, and so they're looking for a connection in these family profiles. So be authentic, share who you are. Don't try to pretend you're somebody you're not. They want to be able to know where you guys are coming from and feel that connection there. So in regards to what format you should use, there's a couple different formats out there, as we mentioned. The main three that can be most helpful for our team here to be able to send via email are when you use Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or Shutterfly. So we'll kind of talk about the different ways that you would create these profiles. So if you use Microsoft Word, the great thing about this is it's really simple and easy to use because most of us at this point in our lives have used Microsoft Word. So we kind of know how it works already. We know how to change the font. We know how to include all the information we want. It's easy to change into a PDF at the end. You're going to need to make sure to include pictures. So just make sure sometimes when we do the Microsoft Word ones, they can look a little bit more plain because it's easy to just type up the information and then just leave it there as is, but we want to make it visually appealing. So make sure to include photos of you. We're going to talk more about this later too, about what types of photos, but make sure if you do that Microsoft Word, don't be tempted to just write a story there. Make sure you include photos so they get to see who you are and connect with you visually as well. There are some templates available depending on the version of Microsoft Word you're using, and we would definitely encourage you to use those as background. So, use different fonts. Try not to go crazy with colors on the font. You want to make sure it's still easy to read, but backgrounds are a great way to still make it look visually pleasing. So as far as length goes, I get this question a lot. Families will ask me, well, is this too much? Are we not doing enough? How long should it be? It's a really tricky question because it really depends on how you're formatting things. If you're in Microsoft Word and you're doing all single space typing, you're going to want to do on the smaller end of about 4 pages. But if you've got bigger font, if you've got a bunch of big photos or maybe a lot of photos included so there's less wording, then you're going to want to make it potentially up to 10 pages or so. You don't want to get too out of control with sharing because you like I said, the placing families are trying to connect with you. And if you share over and beyond, we, run into the temptation of the placing family, hopefully not, but maybe getting bored along the way. So we want to make sure that we are hitting the most important points and that we're saying them clearly and we're not kind of going in roundabout circles. Another thing that can happen too when we're talking about ourselves is sharing those inside jokes, which are fun for us, but then when the placing families read, it's kind of hard to connect because they don't know where you're coming from. So definitely share about you and what makes you unique, but try to make sure you're sharing from the perspective of someone who doesn't know you yet. Another great option is for the family profile is to use PowerPoint. PowerPoint is great because it's super easy to use with the templates. You just plug in the photos, you plug in the information. It's already got everything set up for you with pretty fonts and borders. It's really easy to do. I'd say the tricky part with PowerPoint is not going out of control with the length because when it's so easy to plug in information fast, we end up blowing through the family profile right away, and we've got now, I've seen families create up to 30 slides, which is hard on our team here because once we see it, we love that you guys put so much work in, and we hate to say tone it back, but we want to make sure we best help you get matched. And if we have, a PowerPoint that's 30 plus pages, at that point we're getting into too much length and it's going to be a little too long, and it's going to be harder for the placing families to review your profile in a quick fashion. So, do the PowerPoint if you want something that's easy, that's quick to complete. Make sure you're putting text throughout. That can also be the danger with this one is we just plug in a couple keywords. But like I said, these people don't know you yet, so you need to give context for situations. The other great thing about this is it's easy to save as a PDF. So this one, at the end, you just click that Save As button, you save it as a PDF, and you get it sent to our team for review. So it's a really simple format to use. Just make sure to try to keep that length around 10 to 18 slides. And make sure you're including text and not just photos here. The last one we can suggest is the family profile by using Shutterfly. Now, I want to emphasize heavily up front that if you are using a photo system that lets you create a book, we still need a PDF copy. So please make sure when you are contacting Shutterfly or any of these other types that create books, make sure to ask them before you do all the work if they can export it as a PDF. Unfortunately, we've had families in the past where they've created beautiful books, and then at the end, after they've done all of this work, the company tells them they don't export as a PDF at all. And, you know, for some families, they have created the book and then they scan in the pages of the book and send us it that way, but the quality on it ends up not looking great and ends up not working to your benefit. So just make sure, you know, if you want to use these photo book companies, they are great because it looks like a very clean, polished family profile, but just make sure, like we said, call first about making it a PDF before you do all the work. The other thing too with these ones, because they can get finalized and sometimes you can't do edits afterwards, you're going to want to make sure to send a copy to our staff at Snowflakes for review before you click that final complete button where it won't let you edit afterwards. Because God forbid you accidentally missed putting something in your family profile that's important, we're going to catch that for you, and we want to make sure you can still go in and add that. You know, we've had families where it's been done and now they just have to write an addendum to their family profile, which isn't as fun. So make sure, you know, key things, export as a PDF and check with our team on feedback before you finalize it. And for length, we're looking at around 10 to 18 pages. I've seen the family profiles by Shutterfly get longer. That's okay, but try to, you know, keep it around that 18 number. Same with the PowerPoint. We don't want to get into a situation where we have, you know, 30 pages. So about the contents of the family profile. Now you know what different formats to use, but what's going to go in it. So we give you an outline of all the things that you're going to need to include in your family profile. It's going to be very similar to in a domestic adoption where a birth mother sees your profile. It's going to be that same kind of content information. We've actually had families that have gone through the domestic program first that have been able to easily tweak their birth mother profile to work for the embryo program. So very similar, and if you don't have background in that, creating that, that's fine. That's why we've got an outline for you. So here's some of the things that we talk about in the profile. The first is an idea of what life would look like for a child in your home. So like we were discussing earlier, this is a chance for the placing family to get to know if the embryos survive the thaw and you get pregnant and a baby's born, they know from your profile what kind of life that child is going to be raised in. So talk about, you know, things that are important to you as a couple. Talk about what life looks like at home. Does it look like mom stays at home? Does dad stay at home? Do you do daycare? Talk about these kinds of things so they get an idea of how the child will be raised. And then again, you know, breaking these things down, you're going to talk about your home. So talk about, you know, you don't have to get too wordy and share, you know, all of your furniture in your home and how many bedrooms you have, but maybe, you know, some families share a picture of the room that the child's going to be in. So here's the nursery we set up. And you know what? If you don't have a nursery set up yet, that's okay too. For some of our families, they emotionally, for them, it's been a long journey and they want to wait to set up that room, and that's okay. So maybe just talk about how you already have a space for the kiddo and you're going to decorate as soon as, you know, the adoption's finalized. So talk about your home, your neighborhood. Sometimes families will ask me, well, what does that mean? You talk about our neighborhood. Do we talk about our neighbors? No, you don't need to talk about people living next door. I tell families, talk about, do you live in more of, you know, city life or more like countryside? Are there parks nearby? Is it kind of a small town where everybody's connected, or is it kind of the busy lifestyle of the city? And there's no right answer here, you know, or I should say there's no wrong answer. Just make sure to be honest. You know, don't try to pretend that it's something it's not. Be honest about where you guys are at. Then maybe talk about your extended families or others you regularly spend time with. The point of this is to show that you have a community surrounding you, so you're not just going it alone, because, you know, as we know, parenting takes a lot of work, and our placing families know that because they have raised children. So they know that it, you know, takes a whole community to raise a family. So if you are somebody that has a great big family, great. Share photos of your family. Share, you know, you don't have to have them them write anything in the family profile, but share photos. Talk about things that you guys do as a family, like traditions and holidays. And if you're somebody where, your family's not that big, or maybe you're not that close to your family for whatever reason, talk about maybe, your friend group, people who you see on holidays and you travel with and you do vacations with. Talk about those people that are going to be in the day-to-day life with these children in the program. The next thing is your church or your faith you're involved in. So, talk about your religious background. Talk about, what your denomination is. Talk about values you want to raise the children with, and maybe share a picture of, if you do any ministry or any kind of outreach stuff, show photos of that. And if you're someone where that is not a part of your life at this time, just share about your values. Talk about, do you want to raise your kids, is it really important to you that they love others, or that they care about social justice, or that they're honest? And, talk about things you want to raise them with that are core values that you really care about. Because our placing families, not all of them are of a faith base. Some are not. So it's, it can take longer in matching if you aren't of a faith base, but it definitely isn't impossible by any means. So just be honest of where you're at, and we will find you a family that's kind of right there with you. And then, like I said, share honestly and be genuine. It does not help to try to pretend to be something you're not, or try to pretend to be perfect. Our placing families know that nobody's perfect. They know that parenting is going to be hard, you're going to make mistakes, and they get that. So show in your family profile honest you. Don't try to be over the top and try to look too perfect, because honestly, the placing families will feel like they can't connect with you. We've had a family before in the program where they've done a lot of wonderful ministry work, but that was their whole profile, was where they talked all about the different ministry avenues they did in their church. And unfortunately, it came off as not being relatable. The placing families were responding saying, we feel like we're not good enough for them. And so make sure to be honest, share, things that you guys are working on, and things that you guys are doing well, because we've all got some of both. And then one of the biggest things, the last one here, is your future communication goals. For this one, this heavily impacts how we match, because you're going to have a lifelong relationship with these people. So we want to make sure you guys are on the same page for communicating. In our program, we have families anywhere from wanting to be completely closed to wanting to be completely open, which sometimes that sounds scary, completely open, but we're not talking about them showing up on your doorstep or wanting to go on vacation. We're talking about families that maybe once meet each other at the park in a big open place with other people, or maybe they just talk directly through email. Most of our families are in what we call our semi-open model, which looks like our agency handling the communication. So if a baby was born, you would write up an update on how they're doing. You would send it to us, and then we would send it to your placing family. This allows you guys to be able to still maintain some of that privacy, but still be able to keep in contact. It can be very beneficial to have an open relationship, because then you're going to be able to know updates on how the genetic siblings are doing. So say one of them comes about with some kind of food allergy or seasonal allergies, or something comes up in the parent's health. Well, if you have an open relationship, you guys can share that information back and forth, and now you can be looking out for things ahead of time that your kiddos may have also inherited from that same health history. So talking about photos here, we're going to, photos are more important than I think we probably think. I think most of the time we think, we need to make sure we get the right information in, but photos are important as well. Photos still make us connect with families visually. So, you don't need to go out and hire someone, a professional photographer, and pay $1,000 to get photos done, but make sure that if you don't do that, you have nice photos already on hand. And by nice photos, we're talking about ones that aren't, dark or fuzzy. We can see your face. There's no red eyes. There's, a simple background. And, the other big thing, too, is make sure to include photos that you would be comfortable with your pastor and your grandmother seeing. We've had families come through where, they shared photos of them at the club, which, that's their decision to share. But, maybe share photos that are more sharing more about your home life, like maybe take a photo in front of your house, or take photos, like we said, with your family members, or you show your big community you have going. So make sure to share those photos so they can connect with you visually, because they haven't met you guys. They don't get to see you face to face. This is the only way they get to know you, is through your family profile. So like we're talking about, this sense of connection, be yourself, share honestly, share your desire for children. You know, the placing families, they were in the same boat you were earlier, where they were experiencing infertility. That's, you know, why they have extra embryos now, is because they pursued IVF because of their infertility. And so share about your desire that you have for children, because they had that same one. And share about your infertility experience, because they went through it too. So that can be a point of connection. You know, families will talk to me about, like, how are they really going to get to know us through a family profile and know who we are and feel like they can relate to us. Well, this is how they can relate to you, through your infertility story and your desire to have children. It can be hard to talk about our infertility stories, but it's so important, because it's the one thing that connects everybody in the Snowflakes program. So talk about that. And then share your values, like we were talking about. You know, if you ascribe to a religion, or if you don't, talk about how you want to raise your child with certain values. Talk about if education is important to your family. I hear a lot from our placing families that they care about if you care about education. You know, maybe you don't have your education. Maybe you just graduated with your, you know, your GED, or, you know, maybe you did your associates. Maybe you have a PhD. Whatever it is, they, you know, that's fine, but they care about what your thoughts are for raising the children and with their education. I've had some families talk about in their family profile that they're already starting, you know, a savings account for their future children to go to college. And, you know, not all of us have the financial means to do that, so that's okay. But talk about your plans for that. Talk about, you know, are you going to encourage education in the home? And then talk about family. So like we were talking about, do you have grandparents and, you know, aunts and uncles who are going to surround this child, or is your church family going to be your family? You know, family doesn't always mean blood. Family means the people that are going to be there to help you raise your child. So talk about what that looks like. And you know what? The right family will typically have the same ideas. We're going to be, you know, I read through all of these family profiles in detail as we're matching. That way we can get a sense of, where do you guys connect with this other family? And we will match you based off of these connections we find. So share about that, because the placing family is going to have some of the same ideas. So common theme we've been talking about. It's not about, you know, showing something you're not. So don't try to be a perfect parent in the family profile. The placing parents, they have done parenting, they've had the twins, they've had multiple kiddos in the home, they know the house gets messy, they know the kids scream in the background on the phone. We know it, because when we talk with the placing families on the phone, we hear their kiddos running around. And that's how life is. It's a little messy sometimes when kids come along. So don't try to portray anything about being the perfect parent. You know, I've seen some family profiles where families say, you know, we've never had an argument. Well, realistically, you probably have, and the placing family knows you probably have. So it won't benefit you to say something like that. Be honest about things that your family cares about and things you're working on. So like we wrote here, success as a parent is less about training and expertise and more about the capacity for loving a child, no matter what. So share about your desires for this child and how much you are excited to do those small little moments with them and love on them, because that is more important at the end of the day than trying to portray this perfect parent that we all know we can't be. So how do we get started? This can be sometimes the most daunting part. You know, we give you this all of this information, but this is brand new. If you haven't come from domestic adoption, you probably haven't ever had to create a family profile before. So it can be scary, but the easiest way is to just start writing stuff down. Just take notes. We give you that family profile outline when you come to our program, and it'll give you all the topics to talk about. So just start jotting things down. You don't have to open up that PowerPoint presentation and dive in. Just start with that outline, take notes, and it'll start to come to you. As you're taking notes, you'll remember more and more, and you'll make connections, and then you can put it together in your profile. Consider it a two-step process. Make the outline, make the rough draft, if you will, and then do the final product. Another thing that's important as you're jotting down notes, do this together. If you're coming to our program married, do it with your spouse. They know you. You know them. Talk as a couple about how you're going to raise the child. You're not doing this individually. You're doing this with someone else if you're married. So if you're in a position where that happens, talk with your spouse on what they feel they should include in the family profile. It's very common in our program for the adopting mothers to take on the whole family profile. And I've heard from the adopting fathers say, well, I'm not good at it, so I just let her do everything. While we may have our own gifts and our own talents, and maybe creativity is not your strongest, best quality at the moment, it does, you can be incorporated into this still and still be able to include things. Maybe one of you puts together the PowerPoint, that's fine, but both of you come together to talk about what's going to go in it. Be a partner and do this as a joint unit going forward. And you know what? It helps too because you can bounce ideas off of each other. If you're jotting down stuff and you're having a hard time thinking about how would I describe myself, when you talk to other people, especially your spouse, they will know. They'll be able to share with you where things are at. So talk about things, discuss together, be involved as a unit. And then review. So you can take a look at, there's some samples of family profiles out there because this is something that's adapted from a domestic adoption model. There are samples out there online of what it looks like. Just make sure to change out some of that domestic language for embryo language. So instead of, saying, dear birth mother, you're going to say, dear placing parents. Or instead of talking about a child that's already born, you're going to talk about embryos. You can really tweak it to make it applicable here. It's super similar. So feel free to take a look online for things, and don't copy anybody's, but you can definitely get inspiration from it. You can pinpoint things you'd like to incorporate in your own family profile. So, take a look at samples, and you can always ask our Snowflakes team. We try to have some samples on hand that you guys can take a look at as well. And then, after you're doing this, you're putting things together, you're jotting down notes, you're working as a team, and you're reviewing, get a different perspective too. Like I was mentioning earlier, talk to other people because they can share with you about what they know of you to be true. So talk with people that know you well. Don't talk to someone who you met last week. Talk to people, a trusted friend, a family member, somebody who's been there from the beginning. They know your infertility story. They know who you are as a person at your core. They can give you kind of a list of words and characteristics that describe you so that you can then use that in your family profile and know that you're, sharing things that you know to be true of yourself. Because sometimes self-reflection can be hard and it doesn't come naturally. So if you're in that place where you're stuck, talk to somebody that knows you well, and I'm sure they will have plenty to say. So the introduction letter of the family profile, that's going to be the first part. So we kind of start off with this letter that gives an overview of you for the placing family. It's going to be pretty short. We'll dive into it more, but it's only going to be about half a page to 1 page. It's really just introducing you. We're not getting into your whole story yet. This is just an introduction of who you are so that the placing family knows who you are. So one of the most important things that families sometimes miss that actually it really is super important, start off by writing Dear Placing Family, because it extends a gracious, heartfelt greeting conveying your compassion and respect for the placing family as they make this deeply personal decision. So why does it do that? Why does it extend this gracious, heartfelt greeting? Well, because you're valuing them. You're addressing them directly. You're not just putting this profile out into the world to hope hope somebody snatches it. You are addressing them where they're at. They've made this big life decision. You know, a lot of families put dear donor, but we really try to emphasize dear placing family. They are choosing to place their embryos for adoption, not choosing to do it through a clinic donation program. And so, you know, let's treat them as a placing family they are, and not treat them as someone who, you know, like was an anonymous egg donor. You know, the anonymous egg donors don't have the attachment that the placing families do to these embryos. So make sure to start off with that greeting. It's something so small but conveys so much. And then talk about who you are so that the potential placing family can get to know you. Think of the things that most identify you as individuals, as a couple, and as potential adoptive parents. And like we've been talking about all along, share your personal infertility story. This is the thing that connects you guys. How did you come to embryo donation? I'm guessing the majority of you came after pursuing maybe fertility treatments, or maybe you just learned about your infertility and you came straight to snowflakes. Whatever that story is, share it, because our placing families, they can connect with that. They will start to build that relationship right off the bat as soon as you say that. Sharing your story in a resolute way will acknowledge the deep impact of your experiences and also show that you're ready to embrace this new choice of embryo adoption. So talking about that infertility shows that you guys have worked through that. It's always going to be hard to know that a biological child at this point is not an option, but it is good for our placing families to know that you have recognized that and you move forward and you feel confident in embryo adoption. This isn't something that, you know, you're choosing because maybe this is, you know, the last resort. You're choosing this because you've reconciled working through your infertility, and now you're excited about this option. You know that adoption is how you want to build your family moving forward. Share about your physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, and financial readiness for adoption. So with adoption, there are a lot of components here that are going to make a placing family feel comforted knowing that you have a coming from a healthy place. So talk about your openness and adaptability to placing families, your desire for contact, you know, all these things are kind of things we just keep reiterating. Share about you, share about your openness, share where you are at in this place and time with the family. Don't try to be something you're not. Like we were talking about, there's a wide range of communication that you're going to share in this family profile. You're going to talk about, you can talk about things like, do you want to do emails back and forth? Do you want to do handwritten letters? Would you like the kids to meet one day down the road? Whatever it is that you are comfortable with, share about your openness and be honest. We have had families that have, you know, tried to say they're fully open to everything, and then what happens is we match them with a fully open placing family, and then during contracts, when I'm helping them write down legally what they'll agree to for communication, they backtrack and they get scared because they realize that they put more in there that they were actually comfortable with. So please take time to think about what you're comfortable with. Think about things like, are you comfortable with an open relationship, to have that benefit of knowing the genetic siblings, knowing the medical history? Are you comfortable with closed? With closed, knowing that this child, if they grow up and they have questions and they might not get answers, are you comfortable and prepared to answer those? So really think through this, because this is the part that will last the longest. Your family profile will only be used in the matching phase, but your communication with families will be lifelong. So be honest so we can easily match you with someone that's on the same page. And when you're closing, you know, this letter, thank them for considering you as an adoptive parent, and express your appreciation for their willingness to bless a family with their embryos. Like we've been talking about, this is a very deep emotional decision for them. It was not an easy choice for them to place their embryos, not at all. So thank them for the big life-choosing decision that they are making. As much as this profile is about you, it is also about your placing family. So show the value you have for them, because that will make them cared for and make them feel comforted moving forward with you. So after you've done that introduction letter, you're going to dive into the autobiography, which will be longer. So this will dive into more about your details of your story, more about those things like your hobbies and interests that we're going to talk about. So don't be scared. They don't have to be crazy long as we were talking about. Normally these are about up to 4 pages long, depending on the format you're using as we were talking about. So in the autobiography, you're going to talk about things like your physical descriptions, how you met, your relationship, when you were married, and any children in the family. The one that typically I get asked about a lot is the physical descriptions. Families will say, well, they see my photo, they know what I look like. Well, yes, that is absolutely accurate. But share about your description, share about your ethnic background, maybe talk about things that are a part of your culture and heritage. That can be really neat to connect with the genetic families on or placing families. So share those physical descriptions, even though the photos are there, and as women, we dye our hair. Maybe you were born brunette and now you're a blonde in your photos. So share about that. You don't have to go into detail about this. Just 1 or 2 sentences is totally fine. Then share about how you met. Everybody loves a good love story. So share about how you guys met as a couple, your relationship, when you were married. So talk about what that courting looked like. Talk about your wedding day. And some of our families, our adoptive families, come to us already having children in their family. So talk about your kiddos too, because they're going to be siblings in the family with them. So share photos. Talk about what they like to do, how old they are. And again, don't get out of control. You don't have to share with us what every day during your dating experience looked like and every day of your current child's life, but, share just the highlights, stuff that's special and stuff that the families can remember you by. Like, what was something unique about your story that they could remember that they would maybe feel connected to? And then, like we've been talking about, your community, your circle of support. Share about your family and friends and your religious affiliation and your church involvement or what activities you like to do. So show that you have got people by your side, that when you are having those hard moments where you are exhausted and you don't want to parent that day, that you have people there to encourage you, lift you up, babysit for your kids so you can have a date night. Make sure you're showing that you've got people in your life who have your back, because it's going to take work. So talk about that. Share some photos of that. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, share about your family traditions. Do you guys like to go camping during Christmas? Do you, on Thanksgiving, do you guys have a certain person who cuts the turkey? Share about these different family traditions. My favorite part, personally, when reading family profiles is this part. I love reading about family traditions. So share these, because I know our placing family loves reading about them too. And then, talk about those hobbies and interests you have, skills, talents, including sports or other physical activities in which you regularly engage. Should share, you're going to be going through a medical process as well here. You're going to be, doing the embryo transfer. So a lot of our placing parents care about that you guys are in a healthy phase of life, and you don't have to be running, 10 miles every day. We're not talking about extreme sports or anything. Just talk about, regular activities you engage in. I have families in their family profiles that will write, oh, I go to yoga, or, oh, I do, we just go on a walk every night after dinner. Or, some of our families like to do the 5Ks, which you certainly don't have to. God knows I don't, but you're welcome to include any of that kind of stuff, just showing that you guys are, having a healthy lifestyle, and then also, talking about interests and skills. Talk about, do you like woodworking? Do you like art? Do you like backgammon? Do you like whatever it is, whatever skill or talent you have, because there may be, a placing family out there that shares that, and then they can feel like they're connecting with you on that. So talk about those skills you have. And then talk about your educational background and your plan for educational opportunities for your family. You don't have to have the PhD, you don't have to have the bachelor's. Wherever you guys are at education-wise, that is fine. But be honest about it, be open about it, and then share about how that transitions into what you want for your children, for their education in the future. And then areas of employment. So talk about where you guys work. You know, those skills you have, how did you use them in the workforce? So talk about what your employment is and then your plans for childcare. So talk about, you know, are grandparents going to watch? Is there a daycare you already have in mind? Stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, you know, anything. Whatever works. Some of our families are, you know, half and half. Half the grandparents watch, half they watch. Whatever it is, talk about that so they get an idea of how this child will be raised, who will kind of be influencing their upbringing. And then, like we were talking about earlier, description of your home, neighborhood, and community. So talking about, you know, we've got here in the photo these swans. Most of us probably don't have swans in our neighborhood, and that's okay. We talk about, you know, the park nearby, or, you know, does the community get together to do, you know, a baking session or a party on 4th of July? Talk about what that looks like for you guys in your community. And then, you know, as we're talking about wording, photos, again, are super important. So we want to just run through really quick some suggestions about how to choose those photos. So for photos, you're going to want to try to do about 5 to 15. I know it can be tempting once you get started, if you have a lot you like, to just include tons. But try to, you know, do about 5 to 15 and pick the best ones. Pick the ones that show your care you have for each other, that show your desire to have children, that are clear, that are appropriate. Share those ones in your family profile so we can connect that way. Photos taken in a natural setting are often the most appealing. So, you know, take them in what's normal for you guys. Take them in your backyard. Take them on the hike you guys do. You know, trying to avoid those photos where you're, you know, it's a stock background, or you're going into a studio where, you know, we've got the fake trees. You know, do stuff that feels natural, because our placing families, that's how their photos are going to be too. They're not going to, you know, go out and do a portrait session in some studio. You know, they're going to show you what life looks like for them. So share that. You know, in this slide here, we've got families with their dogs. We see this a lot in our family profiles. Families will include their pets, you know, their fur babies, and that's great too. Feel welcome to do that as well. So like we were talking about, photos from your favorite activities or locations. Share about who you are, especially with family and friends, as part of celebrations. This will give a feel for your circle of community. So don't just do photos of you guys. Do photos of everybody that's going to be involved in parenting and raising and, you know, cares about you guys. You can show that love and bondness you already have with other people in your life. Photos of your home, the park across the street, or the view from your porch. So families will ask me, you know, when they're looking at that, describe your neighborhood. They'll say, like, okay, do we need to have like a picture of our home? That can be really helpful. You know, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to take a picture, you know, you don't have to take a picture of your master bedroom, but maybe take a picture of the outside of your house or the backyard, or like we said, the park across the street. So we can just see where these kiddos are going to get their energy out, like we do in this photo here on the slide. So we want to close now with 3 tips for making successful family profiles. As I've read through so many family profiles at this point, our team came together to decide what are the 3 biggest takeaways here. So this is going to be the most important part. If you didn't listen to the other slides, just try to take notice on these next couple here. So tip number 1, try to incorporate both the hard things and the good things in your journey together. It's tempting to try to make yourself seem perfect, but often it's a struggle. It's the struggle of infertility that placing families relate to. So again, I know I've mentioned this a lot, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Please try to share the good and the bad, because that's what our placing families and all of us have been through. So you're not going to be relatable if you try to act like everything has been perfect in your life, because if it has, wonderful, but most likely that's not the case. And share that. Share about that struggle with infertility, the struggle of maybe trying IVF or IUIs and it not resulting. Share about what that was like, and then share about your excitement to move forward with embryo adoption and how you're excited to build your family going forward and the good things you're looking forward to. This is really how you're going to connect with your placing family. Tip number 2, do not neglect the pictures. Maybe you don't feel photogenic, or you only like 1 or 2 pictures you have. Well, if that's the case, get someone to help. Pictures draw people in, and you'll want more than a few. So if you feel like, oh, we only have one good one, you know, because we just have the one on our wedding day, you know, or whatever it is, you know, have somebody go out and take photos of you. You don't have to do it professionally. Just someone go out in nature, take a few sweet photos, and put them in your family profile. This will help. It will definitely help with that connection. And the final tip, get feedback. You know, it's hard to know when we're writing about ourselves if it's a good evaluation and if we've included everything we should. You know, have your family profile looked at by family or friends that know you well, so they can let you know if they're feeling like, oh, you know, you guys, there's more about your story than this. Let's dive into that. Or, you know, I see what you meant here, but I think from an outsider's perspective, this statement here, it might sound a little different than you mean. So get some feedback, and then you don't need to worry because a Snowflake's team member will always review your final draft. So as soon as you're done with your family profile, you send it to our Snowflake's team, and we will let you know anything we think needs to change. We'll give you feedback because we want to be able to help you get matched. And since we've seen a lot of profiles here, we know what works and what doesn't. So if you have any concerns, a Snowflake's team member will absolutely take a look at your final draft and give you very honest feedback. In love, but very honest feedback. That way you guys know what can be helped moving forward. So that's kind of it when it comes to making a family profile. It can take a lot of work, but it is worth the effort you put in because it is the only way that a placing family will get to know you is through this family profile. So be encouraged as you move forward to work hard on them, and know that if you ever get stuck, a Snowflake's team member is there to help you along the way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah. That was fantastic. I just want to open things up for questions. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask during this webinar, this would be how you submit questions. In the lower right-hand portion of the screen, you can just type in your questions. We already got one coming in, but I am going to give you guys a little bit more time to submit questions that you have. And then, Hannah, if you could click to the next screen as well.
Absolutely.
I did want to let you all know about some future events that we have coming up. So just next week, on Wednesday, June 14th, we have a family that is going to be sharing their personal story of just going through the embryo adoption process. So a lot of times with families that are first looking into embryo adoption, you want to kind of hear the ins and outs of it from an actual family that's recently been through it. So we have a couple that's coming, and we'll just be sharing their story just from the start of the application all the way to them receiving the embryos. So that'll be a really great webinar. And then next month, we are going to have a webinar with a doctor about how to have a green pregnancy and just different hormone-altering chemicals that can affect baby's health. So families that are a little bit further along in the process maybe are going through frozen embryo transfers and getting closer to that pregnancy stage. This is a really great webinar for you to join and just get tips for how to have a really healthy pregnancy. And then, of course, as always, we do want to recommend, if you haven't looked into it yet before, we do have a magazine called Pathway to Family. It is specifically focused on embryo adoption and just has some really cute articles and fun things that you can read through. You can look at it at pathwaytofamily.com. You can read it online. You can even order a copy. So I would definitely recommend those things. Okay. I will go ahead and Hannah, can you see that first question that came in? You're welcome to read it off if you'd like.
Yes. Yeah, so the first question that came in is said, we have one child already, naturally conceived, and want to grow our family to add a sibling through embryo adoption. Do we include pictures of our child? Yes, great question. The answer is definitely yes. So yes, include family photos with your child that you already have. That's wonderful because your child, like you said, siblings, gonna be a sibling. So yes, definitely include that. And I would also make sure to emphasize why you guys are choosing embryo adoption. We've only had one family profile before where a family, they already had multiple kiddos, and in the profile, it came off as their family was complete, and they kept emphasizing, how happy they already are, and and they didn't really say anywhere why they were doing snowflakes. So I would really encourage you guys, like you said here, to add a sibling through your family. So I would talk about that, about how wonderful it is to already have your one kiddo in the home, but how you're really eager to build your family further with embryo adoption so your child has a sibling. So yes, please include a little snippet about them as well as some pictures of your child.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to give just about one more minute for if anybody has any questions. Thank you again so much, Hannah. We really appreciate you just coming in and talking about your experience. Oh, there comes another one.
Okay, let's see. This person wrote, do you recommend your cover photo be just the husband and wife, or should the cover photo also include a child or children you may already have? Good question. Yes, I would include the children in your front cover photo. Yes, your front cover photo, that's, the first one you're going to see, so make sure it represents your family. So if you already have children in the home, I would definitely encourage you to put that right on the cover there in your family photo.
Okay, let me check and see if any other questions came in. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and close up the webinar. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you so much, Hannah, for helping with this. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great day.